Okay.
No problem. Just sending you live now.
Okay.
Live now, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for attending this meeting of the Planning Committee, Newport City Council, the 6th of April 2022. I think the meeting's quorate. Pamela, yes?
That's correct, Chair, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. If I just make a brief announcement. Today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by way of the Council's internet site. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the Council. As you will see from the agenda papers, generally the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consented to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. Proposed public speakers have been made aware of the broadcasting arrangements prior to the meeting. Would members please use their microphones to contribute to the meeting, and please remember to switch off the microphones when you are finished. Also, could you ensure that you refrain from using any mobile devices during the planning committee, and any mobile phones, iPads are switched off or on silent. Thank you very much. And the first item on the agenda is apologies. I have one at the minute, Councillor James Clark. Are there any more?
No other apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much. Second item on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any members wishing to make declarations of interest, and if so, on which matter? And if there is a form available to be completed at the meeting. No? Okay, the next item on your agenda, the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of March 2022. We start on page 3. We go through them for accuracy in the first instance. Page 3. I noticed that the meeting terminated at 10:59 AM. That's not a misprint, is it? Or is it a world record? Next page is intentionally left blank. Page 5. Page 6. Someone present proposed they were a correct and true record, please.
I propose it, Mr. Chairman, it's a true record.
Thank you very much. Seconded.
I second that, Chair. Councillor Lacey.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lacey. All agreed? Okay. There's no matters arising from those minutes. Thank you. And if we move on to your planning application schedule, which is from page 7 to 74 of your paperwork. The first item, number 1, is on page 15 to 19. It's application number 21-0966. Site is Newport Provisions Market. The ward is Stowe Hill. Board members, Councillors Kate Thomas and Miqdad Al-Nuami. There are no public speakers on this, and the presenting officer is Gail Parkhouse. So over to you, Gail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. Just share my screen. Okay, yeah, so this is planning application 21-0966, and it is at Newport Market. It is an application to discharge condition 8 of listed building consent 20-0735, which was for the refurbishment of the market. And condition 8 relates to the existing art glass installation. Okay, so the condition reads, notwithstanding the details submitted, no work should be carried out to the existing art glass screen to the west side of the mezzanine floor of the market hall until full details of such works, to include a method statement for the protection of existing fabric, has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. the work should be carried out in accordance with the approved details. And then the reason for the condition is in the interest of safeguarding the special character of the listed building. So we don't often bring discharge of condition applications before planning committee, but in this case, when planning committee first approved the refurbishment works in December 2020, they required this discharge condition to be determined by committee, and so that's why it's before you today. Okay, so the art glass is a large stained glass installation. It's found in the western end of the market hall, at the end of the mezzanine floor, and it was artwork commissioned by the council in 2002, and it was designed by a Welsh stained glass artist. This image is taken from that artist's website. So the original listed building consent proposed to cover the art glass so that the applicants could display their company logo. It attracted some concerns from members of the public and from the artist. So the condition was imposed to ensure that the covering of the window did not cause harm to the fabric of the building. It is worth noting that the window does have cultural relevance to the building as a piece of public art, but it doesn't form part of the listing of the market building itself. So this is an image of the covering, which has now been installed internally in front of the window. It's a white banner. It's separated into 5 individual banner drops, which are fixed by clips to the top left and right hand edges of the steel dome structure. And then metal ties have been used to attach the banners to those clips. There's a stainless steel cable which runs along the bottom, the full width of the window, and then each banner is attached at the bottom by carabiner clips. And as you can see, the art glass behind remains in situ. These banners are also temporary, and they can be removed, and the art glass behind would be unaffected. The applicant has stated that in addition to the display of their company logos, they intend to use the banners to project local adverts and cinematography. So as officers, we're satisfied that the method of fixing the banners do not affect the fabric of the art glass, as it remains in situ, and the fixings are to the building, not the window. We're also satisfied that it does not harmfully affect the fabric of the building, thereby protecting the special historic interests of the listed building, which was the reason for imposing the condition. And overall, we are recommending that the condition is discharged. Thank you, Chair.
Right, okay, thank you, Gail. Sorry about that delay. Thank you for the presentation. Committee. John Guy, please.
Yes, Chair, just as a minor point really, has the artist that obviously did this painting, etc., has he been invited at any time to make any comments or to give any observations about what's going on?
Yes, we have contacted the artist and given them the opportunity to make some comments or even, speak at the committee, but they've chosen not to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor Yvonne Forsey.
Good morning. I am rather perturbed by this. I think it's unfortunate that the window is covered up. I would like to see it be on display, and I think it's a popular piece of art which people do want to see. You know, I can see the logos there on the bottom of those banners, and you know, some banners perhaps at the bottom edge I think would be acceptable, but I'm inclined to reject this and say no. A good proportion of that stained glass window should be visible to the public from inside. If we look to the left-hand side of that market picture there, you can see a sort of a filled-in white area. So if that continued round on the west end, with just those logos there, and the window was visible above, I would be happy with that. But as it stands, I'm unhappy with this, and I would like to see a good proportion of that window visible to the public.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Forsey. Views. Anyone else? Councillor Jason Jordan, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was under the impression when it came to committee that the stained windows can actually stay there and be in full view. And like Councillor Forsey said, you know, it's a lovely piece of artwork there. Do you mean why not show it off? You mean how long has it actually been in situ in the market itself, please?
Do you want to answer that at the minute, Gail? Or
Yeah, the artwork was commissioned in 2002, so around at that time it's been there for about 20 years.
Yeah, so I would rather think, you know, like Councillor Forsey said, you know, it's a nice bit of artwork there. You know, it's covered up, and why not show it off to its full potential? Do you mean it's quite nice little artery actually?
okay, your comments are noted. And then Councillor Richard White, please.
Thank you, Chair. Two things. I note the conservation officer raised a point about obscuring light with the banners. Is that a material consideration? And also, is there any, to get over what has been said, any provision for rolling the blinds up and down?
Yeah, I don't believe there's any provision for the blinds to be rolled up and down. I mean, they are attached by clips, so that they're temporary in nature. They can be removed. In terms of light, I mean, I think the image does show that there's windows on either side of the market structure itself. So yeah, we don't see that to be an issue.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Councillor Charles Ferris.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know. Can I vote against anything on the grounds that I always thought it was naff? I didn't really think that. No, I was not impressed with that stained glass, I'm sorry to say. I think as an authority we should have thought of this when we gave Mr. Baston a 250-year lease. Credit to the man, he's done an excellent job. If you look at that photograph now that we all can see, it's themed well, and we've got to give the man his head. He you know, to plan as he sees fit. And yeah, if he's brave enough to take it all on, he was saying that on our visit that he wanted that covered up, although he acknowledged that it could always be moved, but that tied in well for wedding photography and one thing and another that this would go. So really, in some respects, his covering over at that end of the building is part of the show and part of his plans to make use of the upstairs. I think we've got to give the man his head.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferris. Councillor Trevor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. A number of things. First of all, could the officer show me the photograph of the stained glass window to start with? And now go back to the one with the banners on. You can actually see through that, so I don't see how the developer can put any logo on that, only at the bottom of the white blinds which are on there. I can't see how that would benefit in regards to advertising or showing any films or anything else because of the light which comes in through the glass windows on either side of the upstairs of the market. I'm in agreement with most of other members. It's a shame to have it covered up. The other thing which I'm concerned about is maintenance of that stained glass window. How is he or the developer going to maintain the stained glass window at any time?
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Gail, do you wish to come back in on some of those points, please?
Only to say that along with the rest of the market windows, that they're proposing a method of cleaning the windows, much like that happens at the moment, really, in terms of its preservation. Yeah, that's all I'd like to come back on.
Thank you, Gail. I don't normally comment, and the committee obviously make the decisions, but I would observe on this occasion that the public have told us that they wish for these things to be protected and kept in place. I think, as has been said, the developer has tried to do that, but the other point that's been made is there's a 250-year lease on this, and in 50 years' time, would they still be protected? As long as the decision and the recommendation from the officers protects us over time. I'm obviously thinking about the mural situation. I don't want to re-raise that, but sections of our Newport public insist that we protect certain aspects of the city. I think this is one of them. So Trevor Watkins again, Councillor Watkins, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Could we put a condition on this that it is to be maintained by the developer to its original state as it is when he took it on?
In perpetuity?
Yeah, in perpetuity, please.
The expression, yeah.
We can't add another condition to this application because it's a discharge of condition application. But what I would say on the original permission for the refurbishment of the market, there is a condition on there which requires, if any works to existing windows are proposed, and that they need to submit details to us. So there is a protection for all windows across the market covered under the original consent, and so this window would be covered by that condition.
Could we have that brought back to committee then, please, Chair, when and if there's any future alterations to be done to either the stained glass window or any windows within there?
Yeah, we can make a note of that. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. I think that is important, Gail, if you could do that. Councillor John Guy.
Yeah, can I say that I propose that we accept the officer's recommendation, taking in consideration what Councillor Trevor Watkins has said, really, and clarified by the planning officer.
Okay. Would somebody second that at this stage, or?
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Ferris, you were indicating you wish to speak, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it would be worthwhile if these things can be removed, if we could see what it would look like. So I mean, there you see on that photograph now with the blinds in place, the way that the entire building is sort of themed, and it's themed well. It looks good as it is, theming well to that point. Would it be possible to see what it would look like if they were removed? We could then, at the moment, we're not judging like for like.
Yeah, the only thing with that, Councillor Ferris, is on page 16.
Yeah.
paperwork, you can see the artwork, can't you?
You can see the artwork, but you can't see the artwork with the interior as it is now.
No. Well, I would say on page 17 is the best that we're going to get today, so to speak, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't see it sort of themed with the new improvements.
No.
That's the old photo.
No, because in fairness, the developer is trying to advertise other things, isn't he?
And yes, and use it for projection of films, and so it does serve a function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're trying to protect both situations, so to speak.
Yeah. Difficult square the circles. Often,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded that we accept officer's recommendation. Several points have been raised and noted. Committee prepared to vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Over to you then, Gail, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Pam, I should have said.
That's all right, Chair, no problem.
Yeah.
Councillor Guy, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, I'm for the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins?
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor White?
For the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Ferris?
Excuse me, what am I voting for? If I vote for, that means that the banners stay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I vote for. Thank you.
Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, against.
Okay. Councillor Spencer?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lacey? I think Councillor Lacey has left the meeting. Okay. Councillor Forsey, please.
Against.
Councillor Jones?
For.
And finally yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
That's 7, 4 and 2 against the officer's recommendations, Chair.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, committee. We could then move to item 2 on your agenda, which is pages 20 to 49 of your paperwork. It's application number 21-1088. The site is the Victoria Inn 2 Nash Road. The ward is Liswery. Board members, councillors Critchley, Jevons, Morris and Richards. And the presenting officer is Joanne Davidson. Thank you, Joanne.
Good morning, members of the Planning Committee. I'll share my screen with you now. Okay, you should be able to see that. So as the chair said, it's application 21-1088, the Victoria Inn on Nash Road. The application, it's a full application for the demolition of the existing building and construction of 18 affordable apartments with associated parking and amenity areas. It's being presented to committee because it is a major application. And you'll see from the reports, because it's a major application, we've consulted in total 37 neighbouring properties. There's been a notice in the press, and we've displayed a site notice close to the site, and we've received no representations at all as a result of that publicity exercise. So the key issues that officers have considered are as listed here. So obviously establishing the principle of development, that's the fundamental first point. Then the loss of a community facility because the site previously operated as a public house. Flood risk because it is in a flood risk area. Scale, design and appearance of the building because it's prominently sited. Residential amenity of future occupiers, obviously because it's residential, and the neighbouring properties. Access, parking and matters of highway safety, quite standard. Landscape and ecology and trees and waste. So for those not entirely familiar with the site, this is the aerial. You should hopefully be able to see the site outlined in red on this aerial photograph. You'll see the existing building and its proximity to Nash Road, which is this highway running along here under my cursor. This one is Liswerry Road, to put it in some sort of context. Behind it, we've got a primary school, but this area is all predominantly residential. This is a plan provided to us by the applicants as part of their design and access statement, again showing orientation issues, but also you can see these green dots. These are the nearest bus stops, so very well served in that respect in terms of access to public transport. The site currently looks quite sorry for itself. It's been vacant for at least 2 years. This is the back of the building, side, front, and this is looking across the access and car park towards the neighbouring properties on the same side of Nash Road. These are some context photos taken from Google just to show the prominence issue. So this is the side of the building. You can see it boarded up as you're travelling south along the highway. And again, slightly closer, you can see how close to the highway the existing building is, how prominent it is, and how unfortunate, I suppose, it currently appears in its boarded up vacant state. This is looking northward on Nash Road. Here's the site under my cursor on the left-hand side this time. And again, this gives you a good idea of not only the relationship to the highway and its visual prominence, but also the relationship with the neighbouring residential properties. This is taken from Liswerry Road as you approach the junction with Nash Road, again looking at the site. So the building as it stands is quite sizable, 2-storey. It's not listed, it's not protected in that sense. And in terms of the principle of development, this is very much urban area. The principle of residential development is entirely acceptable. As I've already mentioned, the area is predominantly residential in any case. So looking at the site layout and proposed, you can see that the applicants have tried to site the building in a comparable location to the existing, giving it good road frontage with that access maintained off Nash Road and the car parking behind. That would always be our preference from a visual amenity point of view and good quality design. This is the building that has been proposed. This is the design. To clarify the finishes, we've got brick on this ground floor element, render, and then we've got use of horizontal grey cladding, again, just to define this forward facing gable. We mentioned in the main issues that we're considering, obviously, principle of development I've confirmed is entirely acceptable. The loss of the community facility is also a material consideration. I've mentioned the building's been boarded up for at least 2 years. It was struggling pre-COVID, but I think the whole impact of lockdown and COVID, etc., and the following changes to the hospitality industry and perhaps the pub industry in particular has really made it difficult to really see a future for this as a public house. We do have support and information with the application from estate agents or an estate agent confirming that no interest has been shown in it in terms of marketing as a public house. And again, it's quite a big building to be reoccupied as a public house, knowing what we know now about the hospitality industry and potentially the way it's going. In terms of flood risk, the property is in a flood risk area. You'll see from your published reports that NRW has raised no objection, but very specifically subject to 2 conditions, which we have included as part of our recommendation. There is a flood consequence assessment with the application, which we would expect, of course, and it confirms that the finished floor level will be marginally higher than what we see at the moment. So the site at the moment slightly varies in height, but is around the 6.7 metres AOD mark. The finished floor level will be at 7.05, so not significantly higher. You'll see that from the elevations I'm showing you. There's no significant raising of the site involved. But what it does do is take the floor level above the 1 in 100 and 1 in 200 year flood requirements, and therefore the development itself, the building and the parking area, will be flood free should such events occur, and that accords with planning policy and technical advice note in relation to flooding. So all those matters that I've mentioned so far are positive. In terms of the amenities then of future residents, I'll just show you the floor plan. As we've mentioned, it's 18 affordable units, 13 are 1 bed, 5 are 2 bed. To give you a better idea, these are the blown up images of the floor areas. All of them are meet development quality requirements in terms of the Welsh standards and living homes, and provide a good quality of internal accommodation. One thing I would say is our adopted SPG on these issues does encourage the provision of balconies to provide some external private amenity space. If I go back to the elevations, so we had seen there were potential opportunities to provide these balconies. What you're seeing on the elevations there are Juliet railings, not actual balconies, because the applicant has indicated from their own experience, because they are a registered social landlord, that balconies can tend to cause problems, whether it's inappropriate actions by the occupying residents, or whether it's an accumulation of domestic paraphernalia which has visual amenity concerns, and they have advised that they don't wish to put balconies in for those reasons. And we accept that based on their experience. We appreciate that they can create some other issues. And in design terms, we're perfectly happy with it, with the railings. Just to give you an idea of what this may look like, although they're not exactly the same, this is just a little bit further along the road. Again, a former public house site some of you may be familiar with, called the King's Hotel. And this is a redevelopment, again, for affordable apartments, etc., completed certainly within the last 5 years. And again, just comparable in terms of its prominence, its relationship to the road, neighbouring properties, etc. But this is, from memory, a bigger development. But this is the sort of context we're looking at now in terms of the redevelopment of this site. So design-wise, officers have been in discussion with the applicants over the course of consideration, and we have sought design changes. So this isn't the scheme we started with, but we are now satisfied with the design of the scheme. As I've said, certainly the front elevation very prominent. This elevation, as you travel south, again, as I've shown on the previous photographs, prominent, and this one also prominent because it will rise above the level of the neighbouring properties. So we have sought to achieve design improvements to what we originally saw, and we are now happy with the design. So going back then to the principles of development. The residential amenity of future occupiers I've mentioned in terms of the internal space standards. On the layout, you'll see, bear with me, let's take it to the layout. There is external amenity space. Sorry. There you go. There is some external amenity space. Bearing in mind that we're not getting balconies, that will be available for use by the occupying residents. This is level. It includes some tree features, both existing and proposed. But you'll see from your report some reservations raised by the landscape officer on this. So we have recommended a variety of conditions, both related to the existing tree protection, but also new tree planting and the general quality of the soft and hard landscape in this area. To clarify, this is a bike store. You'll see that's encouraged always on new residential development. And at the moment, the applicant is indicating that waste, which is one of those issues I raised on the matters to be considered, is currently shown along here. We don't have full details of the cycle store. We know it's going to be covered, so it will be SPG compliant, or the waste store. So again, we're recommending conditions on those, but in principle, there appears to be no reason why we cannot achieve an acceptable scheme in those respects. Okay, access parking and matters of highway safety. The access is existing, as I've mentioned. We've considered the likely traffic generated by reuse of the site as a public house compared to traffic associated with the residential occupation or residential development of the site. Parking is acceptable. You'll see no objection raised in that regard from Head of City Services and the Highways Officer, or in relation to the access itself. So those matters are satisfactory. Parking is acceptable because this is a sustainable location. There is a parking reduction applied, but all the units will have at least one space, and there'll be visitor provision. I've already mentioned landscape ecology and trees, and I've already mentioned waste, but those are all the key issues. Probably best if I move on to questions, but essentially officers recommend that this be granted subject to conditions and also subject to a Section 106 agreement in the event that the social landlord does not develop it for affordable housing. Will safeguard our position on contributions as per normal. That's it from me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Joanne. Thank you very much. Committee, questions, please. Councillor Jason Jordan.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Do you want to go first? Because it is your ward, isn't it? You've got no points to make.
No, I'm quite happy to.
Okay, just a few points, just all the questions. On the height of the building, I know on the planning with the King, the flats were virtually near the same size as the actual public houses it was. This new build now, how taller is it from the original houses which are shown on the street? And what sort of prominent, even though you say it's prominent above the houses, but how far above? And also I like what I did see. There's the electric vehicle charging infrastructure as well, which is put in it, which is very good. I think most all applications now should have this, with the electric vehicle thing. But that will be in another application then for when they do the build itself. Then, will it in your conditions?
Sorry, Joanne, do you wish to answer? Or
I can, Chair. I can certainly confirm that the ridge of the existing property is labelled as 14 metres, which seems reasonable, bearing in mind the design of it. There's quite steep pitches. I'm just trying to find for you the height of the proposed, but obviously we know that there's another storey going in. But if you leave that with me, Chair, I'll come back to you on the height of the proposed building for comparison.
Okay, fine. Okay, Councillor Jordan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard White, and then Councillor Yvonne Forsey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments. Particularly in relation to the cycle store, is the 9.5 metre clearance being obtained that the Welsh Water want either side of their existing sewer. 2, there's no drainage detail drawing, which I find a bit surprising because normally drainage details are provided with developments like this. And the other is I'm a little bit disappointed. There's no mention of any generation of renewable energy. With an area like the car park, I would have thought they could have gone for a ground source heat pump. I know the roof is not in the right orientation for solar panels, but I would have thought the ground source heat pump would have been handy. Just comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor White. Joanne, just note those comments, or do you wish to reply?
Councillor White rightly points out there is a key constraint on the site, that is the Welsh Water infrastructure. Welsh Water mention it in their comments, which we've reported as well. That infrastructure is at that, has constrained the development to a certain degree in terms of its layout. We do need full details of the cycle store and the waste collection infrastructure, and we're seeking those by condition. But my understanding is that the relevant easements are being observed.
Okay. Thank you very much, Joanne. Councillor Forsey.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the bike storage, I think it's absolutely essential that it's lockable and only accessible to the residents who live there. I forget the numbers of how many bikes are stolen every week, but I think it's essential that the condition makes sure that it's a lockable area. I was just wondering how best could be made of that outside area. Can it be somewhere with some benches that people could go in and sit and enjoy? Is that something we could ask for?
Joanne?
We are seeking details of hard and soft landscape by condition, Chair. I thought about that, exactly the point the councillor makes myself in terms of benches and making it a bit more usable. And I think that's probably what the landscape officer is also getting at in their comments. I'm just conscious that the landlord will have more experience than certainly I do in terms of how such spaces are treated, how they're used by the future occupiers. So, I think certainly it's a discussion that will be had when we come to discharge the condition. I'm reluctant to impose a requirement for things like benches, because it's possible they may say they cause more problems than they solve. I don't know. So I'd rather keep it flexible so we can have that discussion at the discharge of condition stage.
Okay.
I think that's sort of a little bit regrettable. I observe near me somebody who, an older gentleman who goes for a walk, and then he could do with a bit of a sit down, so he sits on the top of one of the signs. And I think, well, it's such a shame that there aren't benches. And I think back to other places where I've lived, where a bench can be a positive communal asset, and that we shouldn't always regard it as a negative attitude. I think that's a bit regrettable too. So okay, I
completely agree, councillor, and I may be wrong in terms of what the applicant will say. They may agree it's a very positive thing, but I'd rather not require it. I'd rather keep it as an open discussion when we deal with the condition. That's all I'm saying. But it's up to the committee at the end of the day on that.
I accept it. I just would like to be to put forward as a suggestion, maybe as a proposal. Thank you.
We can certainly do that.
So we've got a bit of flexibility on that aspect of it. Councillor Trevor Watkins, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Joanne, two questions. Can you put up the floor plan with the highways in it you know, where it shows the floor plan of the development.
Here with me.
You had it with the bike store and everything else.
Yeah. I think that's the one you mean.
Yeah,
Oops, sorry, bear with me.
Okay.
There you go.
That's the one. Can you tell me, I don't seem to find it in the highways details, what sort of parking is allowed on that Nash Road? Is there double yellow lines or no yellow lines?
Do you want me to run through? Sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to run through the photographs again, which may help answer that. This is the highway with the site on the right hand side, and I can clearly see double yellow lines on both sides here. And then outside the site again.
That's double yellow lines as well.
Yes.
What concerns me then is the reduction in the parking facilities which you've given the developer, and that's going to exacerbate the parking out on the highways, and also the collection of the waste from the site. People become lazy, they don't reverse on and collect the waste from where they're supposed to. They'll push the bins outside. So that I do have concerns about that. The other thing is the Reen, which is in between the development and I believe it's the church.
Yeah.
Is there sufficient space for the maintenance of that Reen, either one side or the other?
Okay.
Because it is a tidal thing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So there is a buffer between the development and the drainage Reen that is acceptable. We've also had comments from the ecological officer, because these things tend to have ecological value, and they're reported also. The other factor you raised regarding parking, I suppose my answer to that really is we've got the adopted supplementary planning guidance on parking, which does allow a sustainability reduction. The parking requirement in this case, as the head of city services has confirmed, is compliant, albeit subject to that sustainability reduction that the adopted supplementary planning guidance allows for. We have no objection from the head of city services in that respect. So I understand there is on-street restrictions, but the on-site parking is acceptable.
You know, we're talking about reduction of 6 spaces on a development which, you know, 23 residential parking spaces. I do have concerns about that. But the other concern is the public services was mentioned in the beginning. I don't know whether the planning officers and the developer take this into consideration, that the public services are very limited on most highways within Newport today. Most of the services finishes at 7:30 p.m. in the evening. So, you know, if you're working a 12-hour shift, say at a hospital or anywhere else, you've got to use your own transport. You can't do anything else. And most places, if you're on a 6 to 2 or a 2 to 10, it's then becomes your own transport is needed. So I don't think that public services availability should carry much weight in regards to the development as such. And this is why I picked up on the parking spaces, because they are going to be required far more than the public services, unless, of course, it's retired type of development. So that's a comment I wish to make clear. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watkins. Councillor Charles Ferris, wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Joanne, following on from what Councillor Watkins has just said, is there a sort of planned age demographic that this building is designed for?
Not that I'm aware of, Councillor.
I see. And you've got what, 18 single bedroom units?
13 one bed, 5
Yeah.
2 bed.
So what's that, a potential of how many people living there? That would be what, about?
I think the applicant has worked on the basis that the one beds could be occupied by up to 2 people,
Yeah.
and the 2 beds up to 3.
I see. So that's a fair number, probably about what, 60 plus? I don't know how to do the maths.
Yeah, maths is a bit, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be, yeah, just over 50.
Not a bad guess, then, eh? Right, okay. Yeah, okay, and that's a sort of similar sort of occupancy that you've got at the ones at the King's Head.
Yes.
Yeah, and do we know if that's been favoured by retirement or people or what? You don't know who's there.
I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know what the age demographic is for the King's Hotel development.
Yeah, and you've got disabled access for all of this, so there's no lift provision, I take it?
Let's take a look. There does appear to be a lift.
Right, okay, right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Ferris. No other committee member indicating they wish to speak? Oh, Councillor Jordan, wish to come back in? Councillor Jordan?
Sorry, it's me. Don't have my mic on, my camera on. Did you actually find out the height of the building afterwards for me?
Yeah, I was just going to say I still haven't come back.
And also, I can understand where the parking situation comes from. And I go there quite often taxiing, and then they actually use that room, their car park, actually to drop their kids off. They park their cars there to drop the children off. So it'll be interesting to see what it's going to be like then when the development happens and where they're all going to park their cars, dropping off their children in the mornings as well and in the afternoons, which the chair would really notice is his ward.
Yeah, yeah. It's a point well made. Yeah.
Chair, I got one more request, and that is disabled parking. Have we got any in there at all, Joanne?
You're on mute, you are, Joanne. Still on mute. Thank
Sorry,
you.
did you mention disabled?
Disabled parking, yes.
Yes, Joanne.
No, I can't see that any of the parking bays are larger than normal. That said, there is space to do that if necessary. Sorry, I'm still looking for the overall height of the proposed building to answer the other question, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Joanne.
No
Thank
problem.
you, Councillor Watkins.
It just seems like if it overpowers, it's going to overpower the height of the street. It'll look a bit odd, not keeping to the same height level as the other buildings, and it's right on a prominent corner as well, really, isn't it?
I agree. The prominence of the building was key, and that is why we've had discussions with them about the design and the quality of the design. So what you're seeing now isn't what we started with, as I mentioned, but we're satisfied. The applicant has been keen to step up, which is why you've got that. If you recall, when I showed you the elevations, part of it was 2-storey, part of it was 3-storey, that very definite step up. That's to obviously reduce massing, but also to try and tie it in with the neighbouring properties. It looks like the ridge of the proposed is shown as lower than the existing. So it's shown as 13.05.
Well,
That's
the
the proposed. That's the proposed. Sorry, that's the proposed.
And that's the height, and the height of the original pub itself.
Yeah, on the existing site layout, they're showing the ridge. So we're talking maximum heights here. The ridge line of the Victoria is 14.1.
So it's actually under then. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not going to be that. Well, it's not going to be high at all. Really, it's going to be at the level at the.
That's what the information that has been submitted is telling us. I mean, it is possible that we now have a 3-storey development proposed, whereas the existing is 2-storey, yet the actual height doesn't alter because of differences in floor to ceiling expectations, because the existing building is obviously of an older design, so it is entirely plausible. But certainly the information we have provided to us is there will be no increase in height between the existing and the proposed.
Okay, cheers, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Councillor Jordan. No one else indicating? Is somebody prepared to propose something, please?
Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I propose that we accept the officer's recommendations. There's been a lot of good points made by various councillors, but you know, the end result is if you don't do anything about that site, it's going to be derelict and continues to be an eyesore forever. But there were some good points made by the other councillors on it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guy. Someone prepared?
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Thank you. Pam, they prepared to vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Guy, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, I support the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins?
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor White?
For the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Ferris?
For the recommendation.
Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, 4.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Forsey?
4.
Councillor Jones?
4.
And finally yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. That's a unanimous vote for the officer's recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Joanne, for your presentation. If we could now move, please, to item number 3, which is on page 50 to 60 of your paperwork. It's application number 21-1120. The site is Killian Bridge. The ward is Killian. The ward members are councillors Giles, Hughes and Watkins. And the presenting officer is Lindsay Christian. So welcome, Lindsay. Over to you.
Hello, Councillor. Sorry, it's not Lindsay Christian. She's unwell today, so I'll be doing it. Matthew Shaw.
Okay, Matthew. Over to you then. Thank you.
I shall just share my screen a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully you can see that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a listed building consent application relating to Killian Bridge. So I imagine most councillors will be familiar. It's literally the bridge spanning the River Usk on your way to Killian. The proposal is listed building consent for structural investigation works to the existing bridge. The bridge was built in 1806, between 1806 and 1812, and ultimately what's been sought is some investigation works for routine maintenance. You can see some images of the bridge here. So this is a what's been sought is some core drilling into the piers here, going to a depth of approximately 6 meters, and over the archway itself, shallower investigated trial pits. It's been brought before committee because it's a listed building related to council-owned land, so it's council highway, and ultimately, as I say, this is routine maintenance of the bridge to investigate the load capacity. So the recommendation is to refer to CADU to grant. We see this as part of routine maintenance, and it will help to maintain a listed structure for Killian and Newport. So I've fairly short presentation. There's nothing much further to add, but happy to take some questions.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Committee, questions, please, if there are any. Councillor John Guy, sorry, Councillor Guy.
Just turning everything on. Yeah, can I say that you've got a bridge there 210 years old, and obviously it's not really a question, but it's from the planning officer's point of view and from my point of view and the local residents, you know, the investigation has got to be carried out because you know, when you're 210 years old, you're going to have a bit of wear and tear, aren't you, really? And yeah, it's necessary to be done. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people moaning and groaning about it, but it's a necessity. Glad to see it done. So I got every faith in you know, the structural engineers that you know, this is something that is necessary, and I don't think you can argue against it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor John Jones.
Yeah, morning, Chair.
Morning.
Just a quick observation, really. With the bridge being so old and being well used, there's a couple of transport companies based in Pontier that use it. They're going over 38 tons. Obviously, this is having a major impact on the wear and tear of the bridge. Are we going to impose any more restrictions to try and help and prevent any more excess wear and tear on the bridge?
Thank you.
It's just Allen Council is a typical company that uses it frequently, so that just, you know, bearing in mind what we got in Basel with Forge Mews Bridge with wear and tear. So I have got concern with heavy goods vehicles using it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Perhaps Matthew, you can answer that question in a while. We move to Councillor Charles Ferris.
Yeah, I'm also concerned about the disruption to the public usage of the bridge. Will the footbridge stay open while all this is going on?
Okay. Do you wish to answer those questions, Councillor Sharp? Matthew Sharp, please.
Councillor Sharp, thank you. In terms of the heavy vehicles using the bridge, that's ultimately part of why the investigations are happening to assess the loading of the bridge, to understand, and what the engineers will do. They will remove the core substance, they will make their assessments, and I should have added that will then go back into the bridge as it was taken out, which is key to the conservation heritage principles, and they will make their assessment, and then that assessment then will inform them with regard to if or what any further investigations might be necessary, further maintenance might be necessary, potentially further restrictions. I'm not subject to those at the moment, but that's primarily why the investigation is happening, to, as you say, general maintenance, to understand how it's being used, how it's standing up to time, and what future plans might be necessary for the bridge. In terms of the usage of the bridge, we understand that the works will be done over 2 to 3 evenings in order to minimise disruption to the public. So I don't have details with regard to whether the bridge will be completely closed or not, but that's not necessarily a planning consideration. What we're looking at the moment is it's come before, it's a listed building application because there's going to be intrusive works to a listed structure, but we're satisfied that these intrusive works are necessary for the maintenance of the bridge, for the general purpose of the bridge, and the material that they will extract will be put back like for like. So in terms of whether it be closed or not. As I say, all I know is that they'll be doing it over 2 to 3 nights, evening and night time. So I don't have much more than that, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Councillor Trevor Watkins and Councillor Jason Jordan, please.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask, when it was going to be closed and how much notice that the general public are going to be required to have.
I'm afraid I don't know that. I don't know that. It's a council application, so it's an internal application. So we will take note of that and we'll ensure that our colleagues within highways and city services ensure that ample notice is provided.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Councillor Jordan, please.
Yeah, Chair. Sorry, that was exactly the same question I was going to ask. You know, how long it was going to go, how long it was going to be sort of closed for, and you've answered the question, so it's not a problem. But I'll go ahead, Chair, and approve the officer's recommendation to approve.
Okay, so it's been proposed we accept the officer's recommendation. Is there a seconder, please?
Yes, Chair, John Jones, I would like to second it.
Thank you, John Jones. Right, prepared to vote. Thank you, Councillor Pamela. Calling everyone councillor today.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Guy, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, for the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
For the officer's recommendations.
Councillor White.
For the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Ferris.
All the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, for.
Councillor Spencer.
For.
Councillor Lacey.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Forsey.
For.
Councillor Jones.
Yes, for.
And finally yourself, please, Chair.
Yeah, for the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a unanimous vote for the officer's recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. Thank you, committee. We now move to item 4 on your agenda, which is pages 61 to 69. It's application number 21-1124. The site is Unit 1, Aberthorpe Rise. The ward is Alway. Board members, Councillors Guy, Harvey and Truman. There is a ward member who's indicated she wishes to speak, Councillor Deb Harvey. And the presenting officer is Grant Hawkins, Senior Planning Officer. So over to you, Grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So yes, this application is at Unit 1, Aberthorpe Rise in the Alway ward, with the site identified here in blue. The application is for the change of use of the rear of the ground floor unit from retail A1 use class to hot food takeaway A3 use class and associated development there too. The officer recommendation is that the application is granted with conditions. The application is brought to the Planning Committee at the request of Councillor Harvey in relation to the impact that the food outlet would have on antisocial behaviour in the area and the fear of crime and to residential amenity. So this is an extract of the location plan which identifies the site here in red. In terms of the aerial plan, it forms part of this terrace of commercial properties which form the Alway local centre within the local development plan. So there are 5 units which make up the terrace of units. Unit number 1 is the application site, which is a retail shop. Unit number 2 adjacent is a betting shop. 3 is a fish and chip shop takeaway. 4 is a police station, and 5 is a pharmacy and post office. As you can see on the aerial image, there is a service area located to the rear of the units, which includes commercial parking and opportunities for deliveries and drop-offs to the rear of these units here. And to the front, this is a public car park which serves the parade of shops and the local area. There's some community uses to the south here, but overall the general area is considered sort of be residential in its character and appearance. There's a few photographs here. If we start with the top right, just shows a few of the units located within the local centre. We've got the existing fish and chip shop takeaway, the bookmakers, and the application site, which is located on the corner here. So directly to the side of the application site is an area of open space with benches, bin, and some land, just some general landscaping. The top left-hand corner here is the rear of the local centre units. You can see there's a residential use to the rear of the site. So the key considerations of part of the assessment is the impact that the proposal would have on the overall level of local provision for the local centre, serving the community, the impact on the general amenity and antisocial behaviour, impact on parking and highway safety, and the impact on waste. So we'll just run you through the existing ground floor. So the front of the shop is here, is accessed by doors here. So this that I'm showing here is the overall retail footprint of the existing unit. To the rear we have back of house, staff welfare facilities, warehouse, storage, kitchen, office, for example. So it's all contained at ground floor. The proposed ground floor shows that the existing retail area here will be maintained. The overall footprint is maintained, and where you did see part of the back of house sort of staff amenity area, this section is the subject sort of to the change of use, the area for the hot food takeaway and sitting area. So the layout shows that there'd be a cooking food preparation area here with service counter, small storage unit here, and then the sit down area that users could use once they purchase their hot food. To the bottom here, the existing back of house staff welfare facilities are proposed, and there's also a stairs that would be introduced just to take us upstairs to an office space and toilet for staff to use. So in terms of the ground floor, the A3 use, so the hot food use, would be accessed through the front of the site. There's no independent access, so it would be used in association with the existing retail use. There would be commercial doors to the rear, but it is recommended there is a condition that there's no independent access to the hot food takeaway use, other than through the existing shared access to the shop. The existing shop is advertised to be open between 7 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the evening from Monday to Saturday, and on Sundays it's open between 8 in the morning and 9 in the evening. So in terms of the proposed condition for the operation hours of the A3 use, we're recommending that is controlled and restricted to the use of the existing, in line with the use of the existing retail store. Environmental health have been consulted with regards to the proposed use, and they haven't objected. They have recommended conditions that we have included in relation to details of the extraction equipment that we required for the processing of hot food, the maintenance of that, obviously to order that in order to make sure that there isn't any adverse impact on local amenity. So environmental health is satisfied. The applicant has accepted that there will be a condition that requires the submission and agreement of that detail prior to the first use if the application were to be approved. I think that's just about that. If we move on, this is a concept image. This is just an indicative image that has been submitted with the proposal. Sorry, I should add that the end user of the proposed use has not been identified. It isn't a material planning consideration who is to be the user, but just to give the committee idea that an idea that there isn't a confirmed end user at this moment in time that we're aware of. So yeah, that just shows you in sort of the seating area, the service counter and hot food preparation sort of area to the rear of the store here. So if we move on to parking and waste, as a result of the change of use, The introduction of that A3 use at the rear of the store would result in a generation of 4 parking spaces. The highways officers confirmed that they're satisfied that the additional spaces can be accommodated within the public areas, within the public, within the public sort of parking area here and the wider area. And being a local facility, obviously this does aim to serve the immediate residential properties within the area. So it is quite possible that residents would access the proposed use on foot as well as vehicle mode of transport. The proposal would introduce the requirement for 1 commercial space to be provided, and this can be provided within the service yard to the rear of the store here. So any deliveries and drop-offs, etc., can be provided to the rear, as can the accommodation of waste, so refuse bins or whatever is required in association with the use. So overall, we're satisfied that there won't be any adverse impact on those 2 matters. So if we move on to the considerations of antisocial behaviour, fear of crime, and resultant impact on residential amenity, we have received objections from the local councillor with regards to these matters, and we received 2 objections from local residents in relation to this, as well as a petition which has been signed by 15 residents. Many of the concerns relate to the existing matter of antisocial behaviour and fear of crime, which is understood to be an issue within the local vicinity currently. Gwent Police initially didn't respond to the proposal, but did provide a late representation that's been reported to committee, and that they have objected on the grounds that there is existing antisocial behaviour at the site, and the impact that the proposal would have on this. So antisocial behaviour, fear of crime, and impact on residential amenity are material planning considerations, and they have been given due consideration by officers within the assessment of the application. It's acknowledged that there is an existing issue in relation to these matters, and a key point of the consideration is whether this proposal would result in an adverse impact on these matters over and above the existing situation which is experienced within the vicinity of the area. We've checked with environmental health, and they've confirmed that they don't have any record of any antisocial behaviour orders being issued at this specific address. And as I mentioned, Gwent Police have raised an objection, and they've provided sort of crime figures, general sort of figures for the ward in the area, but these aren't necessarily specifically linked to this actual unit. The proposal isn't for a late night eatery. It would be closed at 9 p.m. in line with the shop opening hours, and this is controlled by the suggested condition. There's an existing hot food takeaway within the parade of units, which would close at a comparable time. I believe it's the same time. So in principle, the use and the hours of operation are generally considered to be acceptable within a local centre and a wider residential area. So the introduction of a food facility is considered to be appropriate within the local centre, and it would serve the entire community. And also some of the issues that have been raised are to do with people congregating within the external areas. It would provide a level of internal seating, so it could be considered that people may transition into the unit as opposed to hanging around outside, but obviously that can't be confirmed. So overall, whilst the existing issues are acknowledged within the area, officers don't consider that there is likely to be any increase in antisocial behaviour or fear of crime over and above the existing situation as a result of the proposal. Moving on, there's an additional condition which wasn't reported in the officer's report, but this is a very standard condition requested by Welsh Water, which basically says before the first use before the first use of the hot food takeaway, if it is approved, then details of a grease trap need to be provided and maintained, which would prevent grease from entering the public sewage system. So this is a common condition that we see with these sort of hot food type uses. So overall, in conclusion, officers considered the proposal wouldn't result in any adverse impact on level of local provision, highway safety and parking, residential amenity and antisocial behaviour and waste, and as such is compliant with the relevant conditions of the development plan. And it is recommended that the application is granted with conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Grant Hawkins. Before I call in Councillor Deb Harvey, could the committee confirm that you've all received the late representation from Gwent Police, please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Right then, the ward member wishing to speak, Councillor Deb Harvey, over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to our officers, they don't live in this ward. I live in this ward, as do my other colleagues, and the antisocial behaviour in that vicinity is an absolute nightmare. We, as a council, have had to cut the bushes down to the ground because the children were hiding in the bushes, waiting to attack people coming out of the store. Mainly older people trying to rob them of what pennies they had left in their pocket. On site, you can actually see the roundabout where 10 months ago we had a horrific murder. We're still feeling the after effects of that murder. These kids have been banned from the supermarket by the request of the supermarket owner. They have ripped down the CCTV. They have caused absolute carnage on the street of Lady Hill Road, which is directly behind it. The 15 signatures may not seem a lot. That's because they only went to the actual houses that were at the rear of the back of the parking and the rear of the shop. The gentleman that lives in the first house, his garden, what he has of it, is going to back directly onto, it backs onto the back of that store. Now, if you've got people in and out of there, more so than you normally have, it just gives the kids more reason to perform. We have had dispersal orders on that area, so I don't know why Environmental Health are not aware, but we have had at least 3 dispersal notices, 48 hours at a time, by Gwent Police, because the kids were hiding in where the bushes were, hence why I asked the council to remove them, throwing rocks at taxis and cars and buses. The buses refuse to come, the taxis still won't come. The flexi service didn't want to come here purely because they couldn't afford to keep replacing the windows that were damaged off these kids. Once they ran out of rocks and we got Pobble to put a fencing right the way around their development on the other side of the road, they turned to using hammers and axes and were throwing them across the road as the cars were driving past. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not painting a good picture of Allway, but I am painting an accurate picture of Allway shops. It is and has been and will continue to be the bane of our life. People on this estate, as soon as it got dark at 4 o'clock, refused to leave their houses and go to the supermarket for fear of the violence. The girls working in the store are constantly throwing them out of the store. The store owner doesn't work in the store. He's very rarely there. So he's not dealing with this firsthand. Those girls in that shop are. To a point, the one's husband refuses to let his wife come home. He goes down to meet her to make sure it's locked up, and then he takes her home. That is not normal, and that is only going to get worse if they have hot food and somewhere to sit, because if they get thrown out again, which is exactly what they're going to do, they're going to be outside throwing their rubbish everywhere. And as for the mess and the waste, myself and children on this estate between the age of 8 and 14 litter pick that area every month, And we are every month with the PCSOs, we pick up all the rubbish down there, and you're looking at 8-10 bags of rubbish where we collect it every single month. Some months there's more, there's never less than 8 to 10 bags. The neighbours are up in arms, their vehicles have been damaged off these kids. They just act like unruly thugs. That's the only way I can describe it. It is like a war zone down there. It's incredibly sad because the rest of the estate are pulled together. I've known them all my life. I've lived there 56 years. I love this ward. I love it. It's home. But those shops do not need any more reason for any more ASB to be exacerbated. You've had the report from the police. I'm telling you as I see it. Like I said, I live there. I deal with this every day. I'm just asking the committee, would they please refuse this application? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Deb Harvey. Over to the committee, Councillor Laura Lacey.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come in on what Councillor Harvey has said with the neighbouring ward and seeing the issues that Councillor Harvey deals with on a pretty much a daily basis, and understanding how things overfill into my ward as well with what's been going on. And I think by the fact that, you know, the police have also said no against this, and yet we're still, planning officers are still requesting that this is approved. I think the fact that there's already a takeaway a few doors up, and within, you know, 5-10 minute walking distance, there's a number of eateries down in the Spitty Retail Park. It's not like there's not a plethora of areas that these people can go. And I think just based on the fact of knowing what it's like and knowing the antisocial behaviour, I wouldn't be in agreement with the officer's recommendation on this, and I would side certainly more with Councillor Harvey, seeing what I've seen in my ward that's filtered through from her ward. So I just wanted to speak on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. Councillor Charles Ferris.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I wanted to ask the officer a couple of questions about the plan, if I could. You've got seating for 24, and you've got public toilets. Is there only one public toilet for seating for 24? And I also wanted to ask him, is there any provision with 24 people sat down and the potential for a fire and only a small entrance? Is there any scope for a fire escape?
Thank you, Councillor. 2 seconds, I'm just going to pull the plan back up. Have a quick look. Okay, so with regards to the toilet, I don't believe there is a public toilet proposed. The exits, these are to the back of house area. So these are for, you know, staff welfare facilities. I don't believe they are open for public use. In terms of that and the fire escape. Well, if I firstly look at the fire escape, sorry, the fire exit, there's a fire exit shown on the plan as here, which could be, sorry, trying to zoom in. I think I zoomed in too far. So there's doors here. There's roller shutter doors here, which again are for the storage, but there is a fire exit which accesses out through the corridor to a door here. So this won't, you know, this will be a backup, generally back of house, but in the event of a fire escape, I would assume that this would be made available. It isn't, that would be more building regs, safety compliance, as opposed to planning that would consider that. And obviously the proposal, if approved and did go forward, would obviously have to meet the relevant building regulations and safety requirements. That's also, I suppose, in relation to the public welfare facilities in terms of the toilets as well. So it's not strictly something that we would control as part of planning, but would obviously need to be addressed as part of any building regulations compliance should the scheme come forward.
Well, sounding like an old man, in my day, if you had public seating, you had to have public provision for toilets. It doesn't appear to be on the plan.
It's not something I would have to consider as part of my planning consideration of the application, councillor. So I am not up to date, I suppose, with the regulations that would be required in terms of welfare facilities. But it would be covered. That would be something that is covered as part of the building regulations and safety legislation.
So what you're seeing is effectively, sorry, pardon me.
Charles, can I just clarify that, because rather than avoid some confusion. So what you're saying, Grant, is that we could consider approving this today, but then building regulations would take up these other points?
Well, like many things, yes. That's my understanding. If a colleague is able to correct me if I am wrong, then that would be appreciated. But yeah, my understanding is that sort of thing, like planning, we obviously look at our criteria that we need to look at, and many other things. They would also be considered separately. I mean, similar example would be with the planning process and the SAB process for drainage. They would look at the drainage officers would look at the technical requirements of the SAB process, whereas we would look at the planning requirements. So for this, I believe that the fire exit and toilet facilities would come under building regulations.
Right. Because I mean, one thing that concerns me is the front of this main building is a store as well, isn't it? So there's no fire exit out that way. You have to run through the store, so to speak.
Well, there's a fire exit shown on the plan.
Yeah.
Here, and then through the corridor, which would take us out into the service yard.
Right.
So there's that is proposed. There's obviously the front exit would be available depending on, I suppose, the location of a fire. I think that, sorry, if you look at the existing ground floor, there's a door, corridor, and side exit here, which would be available. So that isn't changing, I suppose, in terms of the current situation versus what is proposed, if that helps at all.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Grant. Charles, I interrupted. I apologise.
I didn't want to sound rude, but I think we're being asked to look at a bit of a half-baked plan, Chairman. I mean, I couldn't have got away with that when I was trading. Those loos would have had to be put in. There we are.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Jason Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I sit on the other side of the spectrum, on the other side of the city. We got exactly the same. Everywhere you have a shopping centre, you'll always find antisocial behaviour. Do you mean we get the same problems in Bettis with antisocial behaviour here as well? By putting something else in to contribute to it, it'll cause more. I do honestly believe what Deb's saying. It's an accident waiting to happen again, for more incidents to happen. Do you mean I wouldn't like it in my ward, as much as anybody else would? I think I would go under the way that Deb says to refuse the application.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Councillor John Guy.
Yes, Chair, I fully support Councillor Debbie Harvey. There's as to the amenities of provision of there's two takeaways, one next door to the restaurant we're talking, or proposed restaurant, and there's another chip shop, no more than about 50 meters away. Anyway, what I would like to say is that there's two planning conditions this can be refused on, in my opinion. That's noise and disturbance of the use, and the other one is criminal activity. And the people to provide this evidence is the police. I mean, if they can't provide the evidence, who can? So there we are. That's what I got to say about it.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor John Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would just like to, cement everybody else's comments, really. With the fast food takeaway chains and bits and pieces in Spitty, plus the two local takeaway shops already in existence at the location, I don't see the requirement for this application at all, so I would like to refuse it. That's my view on it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Joanne Davidson, could you come back in? You wish to clarify your point on fire safety, etc. And the WC is not a planning issue. Do you want to just explain that, please? Sorry, Joanne.
Sorry, Chair. It was obviously something that was being discussed and raised by Councillor Ferris. Fire regs is a building control matter. I do note on the floor plan that the building does have multiple entry points or exit points, however you want to look at it, over and above the main access off the front elevation. And in terms of internal layout, WC provision, etc., that's not for planning, Chair. But that was all. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks for your help. Thank you. Councillor Trevor Watkins, please.
Thank you, Chair. Three things really. I support what Councillor Harvey have said. What concerns me is the security of that rear yard at the back, because the majority of takeaway places have delivery facilities. Now, I would expect those deliveries to take place from the rear of the building, which I would more than likely have real concerns about that, because that yard is a secure yard to all the properties or all those facilities along that block. So I do have concerns about that. Antisocial behaviour, I am aware of what I'm going to say has gone on in the past and will continue to go on at the Always shopping centres. And I'm sorry, but I support the police and Councillor Harvey in regards to this, rejecting this application, mainly on antisocial behaviour and the security access for that back department on the back for the Always shops. That's all I have to say, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watkins. Thank you. I just, it's my duty as chair to remind committee, if we're minded to reject officer's recommendation, we must give good planning reasons for that. So perhaps you could bear that in mind as we continue our discussion. Councillor Mark Spencer and then Councillor Jason Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. Could the planning officer just remind me what is the entrance into this? Is it through the shop they have to go?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor. Did you want me to pull up the
No,
photo
as
or
long
plan
as
again, or? Yeah.
No, that's great. I just wanted confirmation that they have to go through a shop to get to a restaurant, and that doesn't seem right to me. Thank you.
Okay, Grant, thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Spencer. Councillor Jason Jordan.
Yeah, Chair, I would like to go with a recommendation to refuse the application on the grounds of antisocial behaviour, from what the police have said, criminality and the noise, everything else.
Okay, is somebody prepared to second that?
I'll second that.
I'll second that.
Chairman.
Okay. Okay. Right, so it's been proposed that we refuse the application, and the reasons given. Can you repeat them again to make sure that we've got everything listed correctly, please?
Yeah, Chair. It was the noise, antisocial behaviour, and also from the police, and also the criminality as well through the neighbourhood as well.
And the litter outside, Chair.
Yes, yeah,
And
that was the one. Yeah, I couldn't remember that one. Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Okay, so that's all been correctly listed. Committee prepared to vote. Okay. Could we move to the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Guy, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, I refuse the application on the recommendations given by the officers.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins?
Against the officer's recommendation.
Councillor White?
Against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ferris?
Against the recommendation.
Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, against the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer?
Against.
Councillor Lacey?
Against the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Forsey?
Against.
Jones?
Against.
Thank you. And finally yourself, please, Chair.
I don't want to be the odd one out against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. That's a unanimous vote against the officer's recommendations.
Coward. Well done, John.
Thank you very much.
Panel, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, for your attendance. Okay. Okay, item number 5 on your agenda, pages 70 to 74 of your paperwork. It's application number 20-0135. The site is Newport Provisions Market again. The ward is Stowe Hill. Board members Councillor Mikdad Al-Nuami and Kate Thomas. And the presenting officers Gail Parkhouse again. Thank you very much. Gail.
Thank you, Chair. Share my screen. Okay, yes, so back to the market again. This application is 22-035 and it's at the market. It is, oh, hopefully, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. So the application is for a change of use of the mezzanine floor from a sole B1 use, which is an office use, to a mixed use space comprising of use classes A1, which is retail, A3, which is food and drink, B1, which is offices, D1, which is non-residential institutions, which includes things such as medical services, creche, education, museums, library, exhibition spaces. And then finally D2, which is leisure, so uses such as a cinema, concerts or bingo. The application is brought before Planning Committee because the council has an ownership interest in the building. I just have this one slide to show you. It's a plan of that mezzanine floor. There are no other plans just because we're considering just a change of use. So the original application for the refurbishment works for the market includes a condition which restricts the use of the mezzanine floor to just be one use only. It's understood that not including all the range of uses that we're currently considering was just an oversight of the applicant when the original application was considered. So the main considerations for these additional uses are the impact on local amenity, any highway impacts and any heritage impacts. So in terms of local amenity, markets obviously in the city centre, and there are a range of mix of uses including those which are being applied for. And indeed, some of these uses already exist or have been granted elsewhere within the market buildings. There's also a nighttime economy around the market, and there's a number of late night food and drink outlets. And there are also residential uses on the upper floors of buildings along High Street and Griffin Street. So in consideration of those residential uses, we're satisfied that because the mezzanine floor is set within the market hall, and because there are already a range of uses within the market and the surrounding area, including that nighttime economy, then this proposal would not result in any additional harm to residential amenity neighbouring the building. In terms of highways, it's a city centre location. The parking standards, SB doesn't require any non-operational parking in this location. Servicing can take place in the same way that the rest of the market is serviced, which is street side during the permitted hours of access. So we're satisfied that there be no adverse highway impacts and the highways officer has no objection. In terms of heritage, there are no physical changes to the building proposed. and the additional uses on the mezzanine floor would allow the space to be used flexibly. It would allow greater opportunities to enhance the overall offer of the market. So we are satisfied that this would allow for the ongoing protection of the market as a heritage asset. So keeping it fairly brief, really, overall, we're satisfied that the proposed change of use is acceptable, and we're recommending that the application is granted. And that's it for me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Thank you very much. Committee, please. Comments? Questions? Right, Councillor Trevor Watkins and Councillor Spencer and Councillor Richard White.
Thank you, Chair. One question, mainly because of the amount of eateries which you have on the ground floor, and obviously you could be putting more on top of that. How are we fixed in regards to disposing of waste food from that particular facilities, the market itself?
There is a waste strategy for the market itself. Precisely how that ties in with the use of the mezzanine floor, I don't have that detail at the moment, but you know, you'd think that they would tie in with the waste strategy for the entire building. They wouldn't have stalls as such, like they would on the ground floor.
Okay, so there's no detail in regards to the disposal of the waste from the mezzanine floor down to the ground floor to the wherever the waste disposal unit is.
I would have to check on the waste strategy for the entire market.
Well, obviously this is a change, isn't it, from the normal what was proposed in the beginning, the B1, I believe, wasn't it?
Yes.
So obviously we're including eateries on the mezzanine floor now, which obviously is going to be a greater disposal needed for the food waste, if food waste is going to be used.
Yes, potentially. What I would say is that we are still looking at a number of discharge conditions relating to the original application. One of those being that the waste strategy for the building. So if this application is granted today, then we could go back and look at that condition and ensure that, you know, that the disposal of waste from the mezzanine floor is also considered, if it's not already.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Joanne.
It's a point well made, Councillor Watkins, and you accept the undertaking that's been given. Fine. Councillor Mark Spencer.
Sorry, Chair, I pressed it by mistake.
Okay. Councillor Richard White.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I would think it's a sensible thing to have a more flexible use of a space like that than just to restrict it to business use, so I would support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Anyone else? Any points? Any questions?
A second, Chair.
Is someone prepared to give me a chance, Mark? Is someone prepared to propose something?
I will, Chair.
Councillor White is proposing accepting the officer's recommendation.
Sorry, Chair. I second.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Prepared to vote? Right, Pamela, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Guy, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, for the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Watkins.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor White.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Ferris.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, for the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer.
For.
Councillor Lacey.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Forsey.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
And finally yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. That's a unanimous vote for the officer's recommendations.
you very much. I think that concludes the planning application list. The only other item on the agenda is the appeals decisions. We start on page 75. They're actually on page 79, and they're there for noting. And just one other point, there is a further planning committee meeting, I believe, scheduled for 24th of April.
Yeah, end of April.
27th April, Chair.
Everybody else may have a rest in this grey building, but planning rolls on. So thank you all for attending, and wish you all a safe journey home or wherever you're going. And we will see you all at the end of April. Thank you very much. Thanks to all the officers as well.
Cheers, Chair.